Leap to Tomorrow about innovation, AI technology, and the world of tomorrow. If you have a good name for me,
Good morning, listeners. We're back again with the podcast, Leap to Tomorrow, about innovation, technology, and AI in the world of tomorrow. Today we're here for another episode with Itai Green, and I'm finally happy to have you here as my guest. Itai Green is a lecturer and has been involved in innovation, and has been an innovation consultant for many, many years, in addition to being a startup entrepreneur and a sought-after lecturer both in Israel and abroad. Good morning, Itai. How are you doing? Thank you. So it's really a pleasure to have you here today. We've had a few introductory conversations, and I'm glad you're finally here. So I wanted to talk to you. On my podcast, we talk a lot about what tomorrow will look like, how the future will look, both in terms of technology and, of course, innovation. And innovation is a very, very broad term. So to get a bit more grounded and talk practically, what does open innovation actually mean to you? How do you define open innovation? And why is it actually not recommended to implement organic innovation within the organization, but rather to bring it in from the outside? I know the answer as a CEO. I know what's relevant for us as a company that leads organizations and helps them develop innovation within, using a lot of external resources. But I'd love to hear your perspective.
So, open innovation is basically the opposite of internal innovation. And to add another point, in my lectures I have a slide, a quote that says the following: most of the smart people work for someone else. Not for you, not for you. And then, in my lectures, people get offended right from the start. They feel hurt because they say, "What? I recruited the best people. How can that be?" So I say, I never said your people aren't good. I actually think they're excellent. This means that no organization, not even Kroger, not even the owners of Amazon, not even European AI, has the ability to remember the secrets of all or most of the smartest workers in the world. It's simply a matter of statistics. And when you understand that, you realize, okay, wait a minute. So outside my organization, there are a lot of smart people. A lot of smart people. The fact that you got something inside the organization was simply statistical.
So what do you do?
So really, in my opinion, the biggest challenge of this era we're living in, which, as you said, we never really knew it before. With the pace of change, really, every morning there's new information. So the greatest challenge is really knowing how to collaborate with those smart people who don't work for you. Where are they located? They're out there. They're in other companies. We're in Israel, in the Middle East. We are in a startup. And always what we understood. So, a journey which many others around the world have also realized. About 500 international organizations, huge corporations, who understand that they have to be here in order to innovate, to be close to startups, because they don't want to miss out.
The truth is that today, not even, but also in industries that used to be relatively closed off, like the defense industries, which were closed in terms of regulation and security, and so on. Even they are now adopting startups and bringing in a lot of innovation from the outside. That's something really encouraging, and of course, it's not just them. Actually, you just reminded me of a meeting I had just the day before yesterday. I was at one of the big organizations. I won't mention its name right now. And I sat with a team that's really, really strong. They asked me a question. Why should we use you at CodeValue? We have strong people here who are learning the field. In this case, it was about, whether by chance or not, artificial intelligence. And they said, listen, we're really learning the tools, experimenting with them, doing a lot. So why should we bring in someone from outside? So I gave them the same answer you just mentioned, and I'm really glad you did. That's what you call setting me up for a slam dunk. I gave the answer I truly believe in. Every organization has its own core group of really strong people. We work with the leading organizations in the country and around the world, but in the end, there are so many other incredibly strong people out there. And I say, as a company, we see so many organizations and so many systems. And our ability to learn from all these organizations and to teach these organizations is huge because we see so much innovation. Why not learn from each other? I think we should try not to be the typical Israeli, and actually today there's a bit more openness than there used to be, who thinks he knows everything because he's got the strongest talents. But in the end, there are so many more talents out there. Like you said, there's so much to learn, and these are things we see all the time in organizations. So I completely agree with what you just mentioned.
He won't wait for you and your smart people to develop things in-house.
Right.
No way. There's just no way. And anyone who hesitates, it's like resting on your laurels. Because if you really think that only your team, if they're just now starting to learn AI, good luck with that.
Right. I agree with you. It's true that they know the organization's systems and the internal needs better, and that's fine, but bring in experts to help you speed up the pace with what they bring from the outside. And I always say, by the way, that this is one of the most essential things in the world, and it's very common. It's just here in Israel that companies are still struggling with it. And they say, okay, just bring me a person instead of bringing me a solution, instead of bringing in experts who can help me move forward much faster.
The organizations need to focus on managing the projects, managing the product itself, and the actual development should be outsourced. Yours really seems to have an internal ability to keep up. And the expertise required in this world, when technology is advancing so quickly, every other day companies are releasing new solutions and technologies. Who will stand by the money? Just the learning alone takes up all your time. When was the last time you coded? Right. It's impossible.
I agree. By the way, I didn't bring Itai here just to illustrate what I keep talking about all the time, and as a representative of CodeValue, so actually I'm glad that we really see eye to eye. I want to go back for a moment because I jumped right in with a question and briefly describe the background you come from, and I'd be happy if you could tell me a bit more, because as I mentioned at the beginning, you were a startup founder for many years. And being a startup founder is a statement, really, with all the challenges and all the difficulties too, and also all the successes. So maybe you can share a bit about the background you come from, how you really formed such a clear opinion about what you're talking about now, about innovation.
Gladly, I was a startup founder for 15 years. I founded a startup in the field of online video back in 2004. When I was working on it, it was a commodity just like it is today. And after that, I managed companies. I was a senior executive in companies from various fields, biometrics, control and monitoring systems, generally in the industrial world you mentioned earlier, and also in the world of chips, like hybrid antennas for cell phones with very unique chips. So I was also involved in the semiconductor industry. Really 15 years living in the high-tech world, which
But also in large companies, not just in small businesses.
in large companies, yes, but mainly, I was also at Elbit. I was at Enigma Deus, that's already Spanish, in a big company. But honestly, most of my experience comes from startups. And I've seen startups from the glamorous side, the one you sometimes read about, but mostly from the less glamorous side, the one people talk about less. And those are really the tough sides of entrepreneurship. And I think I can honestly say that I haven't forgotten the hard days. Meaning, when I meet entrepreneurs today on behalf of my clients, I remember that I used to be on the other side of the table. And I remember how hard it was. And I often tell clients, even in lectures, I know, you have to work with startups, and keep in mind that in order to work with a startup,
you need to know how to speak startup essay. The startup will never speak corporate.
That's right.
Because that's against the DNA of a startup. A startup, by definition, doesn't have money in the bank. By definition, it doesn't have time. It doesn't have oxygen. So it's under pressure. It has to move fast. It doesn't have the luxury of a long, bureaucratic process.
Let's break it down. Let's break it down.
It's a cliche sometimes when people say, here are tips for startups. Like, you as a startup need to know how to work with a big corporation. You need shipping. Absolutely not. We call that a completely wrong approach. You want to work with a startup? You have to work with a startup? Do yourselves a favor and learn what it's like to work with a startup. And working with a startup is different. That's just how it is. It's much more challenging for a corporation. I once found myself leading a discussion in a corporation. There were 70 department managers there. So I asked them, I tried to explain to them what the difference is between them, corporate employees, and a startup employee they're now meeting for some pilot project that's being set up. And then they'll say, I have a question. Have you ever not received your paycheck on the 10th of the month? The 10th of the month. They told me no, because the prosy might get paid a month in advance. I didn't know that, and honestly, as long as I get my paycheck, I don't even think about it. I don't have any questions. As long as I get paid, it's all good. It just happens automatically. Listen, let me tell you something. When a startup shuts down, in many cases, the founder hasn't taken 6 months' salary and hasn't paid another 3 months' salary. I've been through that, so I found myself as a founder, as the CEO of a startup, not as a founder, but as an employee, as the CEO. I got to a point where the startup owed me over 200,000 euros. And then what would we see? Not the polite European way, but the blunt Israeli way. Dudley, Yuri, tell them, are you crazy? How do you even manage after such a crash in 2030 at home? It's a fine line between being an entrepreneur and being an employee. Coker, that's a friend who's an employee. So, people whose mindset is different from mine. I haven't forgotten those days. They paid me back the money, but I haven't forgotten those days. And I know that when I meet an entrepreneur, if I and a client want to work with him, we have to meet halfway. We have to work in our own language, with transparency, speed, differently, and exactly, a right to exist. Yes, he doesn't have a right to exist. A corporation also has a right to exist. That's right. Because a corporation wants to work with startups. And if it keeps working in the old patterns, with people, Strauss, I have no connection. They pay startups. Immediately, not net plus 90. That's a market signal that says, we understand you, startups. We understand that you need the money. It's so important.
I totally agree. So, speaking of understanding startups and all that, you say organizations have to work with startups. Why?
The bar, the timing. Someone else will introduce the gargle. 80% of the grinder. You don't need to reinvent the wheel now. Startups, technologically speaking, live by the pace. They know the pace of technology. In terms of interpretation, they're here, they have nothing to lose, it's all good. My window is 24 shekels. They got results because they have talented people, and they don't have barriers in the rock only. They don't have no. An entrepreneur doesn't have no. He doesn't even know that word. He creates something out of nothing. He always finds a way. And for big organizations, usually, they don't have that kind of drive. These aren't the usual things in a big organization. In a big organization, there's hierarchy, processes, committees, bureaucracy. That's big organizations. Even technology organizations that aren't large aren't like that.
Right.
And to maintain agility, to keep a big organization relevant. To create relevant DNA, and not just for that, it's really important to work with startups. You also get quick solutions, usually for less money or a lot less money than what internal R&D would cost. We already talked about time. It's the fastest in the world. And there's also a kind of magic that happens when a corporation works with a startup. Even the most cynical people in the organization.
Bro, they get swept up in the magic of doing, of the energy. Not all the kids are the same.
Let's just say, when you meet the kids, it's like love at first sight.
It's not mind-blowing. Open your mind to the art of the bot.
I recently realized there's nothing like it. That's the fun of creation. They sound to me like people who just want to do what they love, to fly on tartans. And on the other hand, when the kids come to the organization, even the most cynical and skeptical people in the organization, they suddenly have a light bulb moment. Even the tech people, by the way, which I've been enjoying more lately, because even they get it now, something they didn't used to understand. In the past, tech people would often be the ones blocking things. Today, honestly, at least with my teams, maybe I'm just lucky, even the tech people, when they meet really good entrepreneurs, they truly understand that what the entrepreneur knows how to do, they themselves just can't do in-house, and ego doesn't get in the way.
Or it would take them a long time to do it.
I want to tell you that in many cases, even time won't solve the issue.
Right.
Even with a lot of time and money, they still wouldn't reach what the entrepreneur's team can do. That's their profession. They went and developed something very specific. They're experts in that field.
Exactly.
Who knows, maybe there are experts inside the company, but that's not really relevant. It's not relevant, it's just noise. And I want to tell you, I am trustworthy to be many times. You bring a startup to CEO and he says, show me the ROI. What ROI? For 2 years, you are not magnified with the ROI. This is the largest activity of the largest ROI in activities with startup. In the first 2 years, it's major. Why? What did he ask? One of the added benefits of working with a startup is that people in the organization open up. They become open to new things. They're willing to try things out. They put their egos aside, curious. They collaborate. And that's why I always work on this, but with HR, with finance, with procurement, with everyone. Do it with everyone. For me, 2 years make a difference. As many employees as possible from across the organization need to get involved to meet, to work with a startup. Because when that happens, the money follows.
It has a very significant impact.
The legal departments of the people. I studied law, the rest did too. Recently someone even made a move to pay for an investment. It's all in my head, but I studied law. My main degree, I know the people, I know them. And also these people, when they meet a startup that solves a real problem for them, the next time someone else in the organization comes with a startup, they'll already follow your lead. That's why it's so important for the HR folks. The dynamics, the energy, the change. That's the layer above. HR has an amazing role in transformation. A lot of times, people don't fully understand. HR has an important role, not just in training, like let's introduce everyone to Gen AI tools. No, it's about culture. Culture, of course. And in this period, I tell people in HR, I say, listen, 2 candidates come in. One was a founder of a startup, and one just worked at a startup. There's no comparison. Take the head of the startup. Meaning, always try to bring in the PNA, the ones who are more open-minded. It's really, really important you analyze the dynamics of this thing. I don't know if it's 95% or 90%, and I also don't know how you define success. If a startup that just survives counts as a success, or if not shutting down is what you consider. So first of all, when you're in line, it happens for a lot of reasons. It happens because you miss the market, because you invent something the market doesn't really need. It happens because a lot of times we entrepreneurs get sidetracked.
It also happens because sometimes a tech entrepreneur just doesn't have experience raising investments or running a company.
Even in this regard, in Israel, entrepreneurship has really developed a lot, and there are tons of tools that support entrepreneurs.
Shekel system, right?
Basically, you really have everything. You've got support for every step. We Israelis, we have a good thing going. We share knowledge. It's different. In other ecosystems, everyone is just out for themselves. But specifically in Israel, there's a lot of sharing. Let me be honest, we all think we know everything. There's that element too, but I actually want to focus on the other side. There's a ton of collaboration in the ecosystem, both among investors and entrepreneurs. A lot of support, joint ventures, things you don't see in other ecosystems. That's just how we are as Israelis, so it pushes us all forward faster. Now, and still, starting a startup is tough. And today, in my eyes, the challenges are less about technology. Technology today is an enabler, not an obstacle. It's there, you just need to use it. But sometimes, people really develop something that isn't needed. The market doesn't need it. So first of all, you really need to meet your potential clients. whether they're corporations or others, meet them and really, almost artistically, understand the problem and what's needed. And as a founder, it's hard to hear no, so you end up banging your head against the wall. But that doesn't work. And this is where the team comes in. It's really tough. It's really tough.
That's what everything stands or falls on in my eyes.
Absolutely. A team is like a marriage. If it doesn't work, it's not going anywhere.
Right.
And a lot of times, unfortunately, there are good teams that end up shutting down because that's just the nature of startup funding. But that shouldn't discourage people from working with startups. That's something I always remind myself, and I want you to remind me too. So what? 95% of them shut down. So what am I supposed to do? Just give up on everything? Okay, not a statistic from her.
No, I don't think that stops people from starting startups. Probably from the developers.
I'm more concerned about the corporations who might say, oh, let's just develop this in-house because 95% of startups fail. So even if 95% of startups fail, let's challenge the odds and aim for that 5%, right? Now, I can share from my own experience. 1 out of 50 pilots failed with my clients because the startup shut down. I think that's a risk you can handle. Now, how does that happen? It happens because you do your homework beforehand. You check the team, you check the investors, you check the product, and you check its relevance. And if, let's say, you come to the conclusion that there's a real need for this product, you've already eliminated a very significant risk because there's a need for the product. If my client, a bank, needs this product, then this product will solve the same problem for thousands of other banks around the world.
Right.
Because a lot of times people think that's the main challenge. It's not.
They're facing the same challenges.
Most of them have a competitor. Competition is simply a founder who executes faster. That means share your challenges. What are you struggling with? It's not like the competitor doesn't know. How do you deal with those challenges? Who are you working with? Is the real challenge actually execution? And how do you really manage to get to a point where you select startups in the right way? Right. It's work. Of course.
So your role today, what you actually do, is you act as a bridge between startups and corporations, between companies and corporations, right?
10% of my work is scouting. Finding solutions that are relevant to clients, to their problems, to the challenges clients face. 90% of my time is dedicated to internal work, to mobilize the organization, to get people to be able to extract value from this marriage with the startup, and I accompany, in every case I'm involved, the work with the startup all the way through the pilot and the integration, and sometimes even investment. That's where most of the work is. Because finding the startups, I'm telling you, yeah, honestly, even right here, there are startups, there are good startups, that's a fact. The hardest part is getting the organization to really commit to the process and actually change, because it requires change. It's not easy. We're talking about a different culture. But it's possible. If you do it right, it's possible. I developed a certain flow. I can do more. In the end, I want the listeners to walk away with some kind of practical toolkit. I really don't like the general talk about innovation because it's a bit vague. Right. There are ways to do it. I'm very practical. My output isn't just presentations. Get your hands dirty. What did you actually do? So really, how do you do it? The way I do it, I facilitate the practice. I meet with the managers for several sessions, about an hour with each manager, to understand from them what the challenges are. I leave the office, and after a week, I send them a list of 50 potential, practical solutions that I think are relevant to, say, the 3 main challenges that came up. Each unit in the organization. Then they just need to spend an hour in total going through an Excel sheet, a minute on each one. They're Excel people, domain experts. They look at a startup's description for a minute and can immediately tell me if it's relevant or not, or rate it 0, 5, or somewhere in between. They know how to tell me. In the end, I take this list after they've given the challenges and decided what's most interesting. And I tell them, listen, in a week I'm going to hold an innovation workshop. Then we get to this workshop. That same VP or CEO or board chair comes in with the 10 people who report to him or her, and we spend a day focused on innovation. What is an innovation day? It always starts with a lecture from me whose purpose is to immerse them in the new world, to explain to them what's happening here. And how do you do it right? And why do you need to do it? And why is there no choice? With very concrete tips on how to do it right. Then we go into a room with the 10 startups rated the highest because they're the most interesting. That means the client can't say to me, listen, this isn't interesting. What do you mean it's not interesting? You gave the challenges. I brought you 50, you said. These 10. Wow. So I brought you the cream of the crop, right? They open up the problem for you. The 3 problems you gave me, 3 challenges. Then the top startups come in one after another. In the room are the relevant people, the ones for whom this actually solves the problem. They get 10 minutes to pitch. No more is needed, and no one interrupts the entrepreneur. It's hard for us as Israelis not to jump in, but it actually gives a good vibe.
Question clear.
It's a good vibe. And then there are 20 minutes for follow-up questions and open discussion to see if it's relevant for us to. And the result of this event, of the funnel I just described to you, from 3 challenges, 50 solutions, 10 wow moments, and a workshop like this, the end result, do you know how many startups want to have a second meeting?
I'm curious to hear what happens next. 7.
Now, I didn't say there are 7 pilots, but there are 7 with a second meeting. That means there were 7 that really solved the problem. And then you have a second and third meeting with all the relevant people and everything. And if, in the end, that business unit out of 50 from 3 challenges, 50 startups, 10 startups, 7 ends up with 2 pilots in the coming year, wow.
That's enough.
To note across the organization in 10 different business units, and when your organization in a year from now will look different.
Absolutely.
And it's really not hard. And as people who understand.
But I have a question for you in this context. Usually, I assume every organization is different, but usually, who are actually the candidates within the organization who can lead innovation? And you see that their impact is significant because business units can encounter a lot, but in the end, it's interesting. Is it with the CEO? Is it with, you mentioned the chairman, who actually holds this responsibility? Because at the end of the day, it's technology.
That's such a tough question because in every organization, it's really different. And when I try to ask myself, really, the question, I've asked myself this question so many times, and with each of my clients, it's someone different who's the dominant one leading this innovation initiative. And truly, in every organization, it's different. A lot of times, these are political decisions. That's just the truth, but that's the reality of life. Meaning, there's someone in the organization who's very powerful. It always has to be under the CEO, that's clear. Innovation needs to be in very close contact with the CEO. Otherwise, if it's distant, it just doesn't work.
Do you believe the CEO's role is to drive innovation?
They need to be very hands-on. Really, yes, with their finger on the pulse, yes, absolutely. Obviously, he's not going to start meeting with every startup, but yes, he needs to be hands-on with it. He needs to keep track of it. He needs to budget for it, and his involvement is really important. Yes, when startups fill up their calendars, he needs to meet with them. A lot of times, a good startup founder who meets with the CEO, even if it doesn't end up in a partnership or a pilot, still opens up the CEO's mind.
Absolutely, that's true.
And sometimes it's the technology. And sometimes it's the business units leading it. Sometimes it's strategy. And sometimes it's a blessing not in marketing. And innovation can really be found in so many places. At the end of the day, in my opinion, if the CEO is on board, and if he's managing the innovation, then the right people are in the right place. And in a moment, I'll tell you what I think about that. Who is the ideal innovation manager? So then it really doesn't matter where innovation sits within the organization. So I have a question. Is innovation the same as technology? In my opinion, yes, even though many people will tell you otherwise. The fields I believe in, that I live and breathe, and that I understand. And I don't pretend to know what I don't, at least from my perspective, yes. Same here, from my perspective too. Okay, I didn't know that. Ultimately, technology drives this world. A process change, just a process change.
I immediately wrote to them, CoreSite. Within 4 hours. I always show this in presentations because I have the screenshots from the WhatsApp group. Within 4 hours, CoreSite was at Soroka, and within a few more hours, they were also at Barzillai. The next day, they sent a message, at Soroka, everyone was identified. And it was thanks to the technology. I get goosebumps every time I tell this story. Now, the positive part here is really that the ecosystem came together, and that's open innovation. There was a challenge. And there was a solution. And in this case, of course, no one talked about commercial aspects. Now they just went to solve the problem. But this is an example of a true innuendo.
Examples in public relations.
Right.
There's a CEO I know who went to Germany to try to do some public relations. It was really after October 7th. What we did was develop an app that simulates missile attacks in different parts of the world, so people could feel what we experience here in Israel, how we constantly have to run to the bomb shelter, how we're not really living, our lives here are just crazy. And we did this in places like Germany, in Berlin, and in other areas as well. The reactions were insane. She really went there with the app, and she said, "You have no idea, it reached the very highest levels of government there." We really did it. We developed this app in just 3 days because we had to move fast, and of course, it also got attention for us. And there were many, many more initiatives, not just ours, but from others as well, in the context of public diplomacy, which I think is truly amazing, and all of it was done through technology.
That's right. Today, with AI, public diplomacy translates any content into any language instantly at the push of a button, things that simply weren't possible in the past.
I agree. So, speaking of AI and Gen AI, do you think this is the next revolution?
I think it's the current revolution. No one really knows what the next big thing will be. Honestly, it's very hard to tell. We're being humble here. We really don't know. It just burst into our lives. With a bang. I think today we're starting to see more and more agents that are independently creating other agents. Meaning, they're already building an actual workforce. They're firing each other. They're checking each other's work. They're really identifying each other. They're identifying each other. And on the side, there will be a person just making sure everything is running smoothly. Now, it's a kind of evolution, but it's happening even more than I thought. And I think that's where today I see the more interesting things, not futuristic. They're already futuristic, but I think within a year we'll already see we've just gone through the last quarter without even noticing. A month ago, I spoke with a European company that has a call center with 13,000 employees.
In call centers, it's crazy.
I spoke with the CEO and the CTO, and first of all, I was really impressed because they're not stuck in the past. They understand that the world is changing, and they're not turning a blind eye.
It's already there now.
Exactly. So I asked him, okay, so how are you going to make money? Because he told me, listen, within a year, I'm going to lay off the employees. I won't have 13 employees here anymore. I'll have 100.
He'll do it with agents.
So what did he tell me? He told me, listen, I get it. My turnover will drop dramatically, but my profitability will go up because my asset is the customer. Instead of providing people, I'll provide technology to the customer. And this is an industry that's huge worldwide. It's so big and it's changing, or as some would say, it's taking a hit, a huge hit, in no time. We're talking about within a year and a half. By the way, this industry, that's also in Hebrew.
By the way, they say this is the industry that's going to get hit the hardest. Just to be clear, it's already here. In terms of people, in terms of manpower, it's going to drop dramatically.
When my kid wants to study, what should I tell him? Will you study computer science? Don't study computer science. It's still a profession. Wow, it's not. I mean, back in the day, QA wasn't considered a big deal. Today, in the end, you still have to study. You need to know how to debug, how to do QA, how to understand whether the output is what you expected. But it definitely has a dramatic impact. And according to all the studies, the extent of the impact in development is the highest or among the highest.
When you say development, you mean both QA and developers.
Yes, yes, but really, it's a world that's also changing, and the pace is faster.
The pace is very fast. I still think I'm one of those who belong to the school of thought that believes developers will still be needed. Developers will need a slightly different skill set. I call them AI developers or AI architects. Because in the end, it's true that today there are tools that can also think and solve complex problems, but I still believe that for the most complex problems, there will need to be a person who is an architect in their abilities, someone with system design skills, and they will need to do, of course, they'll use the tools, yes, definitely, but they'll still need to challenge what we call the machine, the Gen AI, the agents, in a much more complex and deeper way, and yes, that will still be needed. I understand the issue with juniors, that it's definitely a challenge, but I think they'll need to make what you might call a very quick leap, specifically into areas like architecture and such, and less into coding. And that's where the big change will happen. There are tons and tons of articles and studies talking about this, that while many roles will disappear, there will also be new roles created.
Right.
And even more than what exists today, so I really believe in that, and I actually see it happening. I'm beyond just hoping. We can see it happening. Today there are so many tools, I agree with you, and with a lot of these tools, when we challenge them, there are still obvious problems that will definitely be solved soon, even in the near future. But there will still be a need for people to guide and challenge them.
I think fewer people will be needed in this specific field.
I think there's a different skill set that will grow, and it's more in architecture and much more complex expertise, absolutely. And in the world of QA, I agree with you, there will be more automation there. That's true. For what it's worth, for those who came from that world before, I was the CEO of Qualitas for many years, and the evolution you're talking about, the QA of what used to be and what it is today, I've experienced it over the years, and definitely today, what is it today? In the last 2 decades, it's become a full-fledged profession. It's not just go or no go. But even there, I believe there's a big change happening. Earlier, we talked about where these things, this innovation, are found and so on, but today we understand that it's not just the domain of technology. We mentioned before that it's also in marketing and other areas, and anyway, when you come today to solve problems, where are most of the problems found? In development processes within the technology, or also in operational areas.
Also in operational areas.
For example, a month, something you experience as challenges that happen to a lot of companies?
I think in every bank, every back office, it's a heavy burden on the organization. There are a lot of repetitive tasks done there that a machine could replace. These tasks cost a lot of money for the organization.
That's true.
And in the end, when the organization comes to implement innovation, if it solves an operational business problem, it will probably manage to make a bigger impact on the organization than if we just make a small improvement in development. A lot of organizations focus on these areas, and that's where they see the impact of innovation, the operational areas, these zones, and that's where, as they say, a lot of money is just lying on the floor. So that's where I see it.
So in your view, what will tomorrow look like?
It's hard to know.
Prophecy is for fools. I know, but when you look at the state of the art in technology, where is it headed? What will organizations look like? In your opinion, in the future?
In my view, organizations will look very lean. They will be resilient to storms. When you rely on technology, you're more resistant to crises like COVID or security issues or whatever comes next. meaning the technological component will be the essence and the organization itself will be smaller. And we'll probably need to invent more businesses and more things because honestly, we'll need to provide people with livelihoods secretly because otherwise we'll face a global macro problem. I believe we won't reach a situation where the state pays subsidies to people while they're just hanging out at the beach. People will have to work, but it will be a completely different script, and people have to be very prepared for it, adaptive, right? To just close your eyes and say, my position is secure. No one can say that today, and the only way to stay relevant is to experiment with the tools and approach everything with an open mind, both the GNAI tools and startup meetups and startup pilots, because in the end, I think it goes beyond just the tools. I think it's a mindset.
I think it's not just on the individual level, it's also on the company level, of course, where the company needs to adapt and differentiate itself in the market from a business perspective. Through technology, we've already seen companies disappear in the past because they got left behind.
One of the most important things in an organization is not to be caught off guard. And in the end, as we said, and I hope we agree that there are a lot of smart people outside the organization, the most important thing for an organization, for the CEO, is not to be surprised by something new. Meaning, it's better for you to know that someone is about to take you out. It's better to find out as early as possible so you can decide if you want to be their partner, or because if you just close your eyes to it, well, there's no precedent, all of our history, or even in my view, at Google. And on that note, in this context, I want to tell you, a lot of CEOs make a mistake and say, I'll hire a big strategic consulting firm now, pay them 7 figures in euros, because no one ever fired a CEO for hiring McKinsey, BCG, or Teva, right? They didn't fire them. No, yeah, a closed company. They didn't fire him, and they'll tell me where the world is heading. Where is technology going? Where is innovation going?
They'll write a report.
And they'll write a report with a lot of slides, a fancy PowerPoint that cost a fortune, and by the time it's written, it's already irrelevant a minute later. So what did you actually accomplish with that? Nothing. Now, the big consulting firms, McKinsey, they're the smartest people in the world, and I don't take that away from them. But in the world of innovation, they have no value, in my opinion, and I'll tell you why. When there are good innovation managers, and we haven't even talked about what makes a good innovation manager, but I'll say it in one sentence. A good innovation manager isn't just someone you hire because they managed innovation elsewhere. By the time they figure out the internal politics, it's a waste of time, it'll take 2 years, and it's unnecessary. A good innovation manager is the best project manager in the company with the best people skills you can find. That's the best innovation manager, in my opinion. Everything else can be supplemented, can be learned. So basically, if you have good innovation managers like that, they know the startups, the entrepreneurs, both men and women, before the venture even has an online presence, before the world knows about it. And I see this a lot at corporates. When they have good innovation managers, the entrepreneurs come and knock on their door when they're still in the garage stage, before there's even a website. McKinsey and company will only know about them once there's a website. But when they're still in the garage, McKinsey doesn't know them, but my innovation manager does. And then he knows how to say, well, there's something here that's still in the garage, but it could be the disruption of my industry. That innovation manager will reach the CEO long before the McKinsey report does, and timing is everything. And here I want to tell you, first of all, it's more efficient, an innovation manager. I'm cheaper than my report.
By the way, I really believe in your approach, not just in your understanding. When you bring in an external body that lives and breathes technology, that sees the whole ecosystem.
A sensor.
Exactly. They'll not only be able to tell you where the world is heading, but they'll also know how to help you implement it.
Right.
And to make it usable. And I always say, we had an organization we've been working with for a few years, a company that's international. It was acquired by an international company, and they were really debating whether to go with one of the big firms. Doesn't matter. I won't mention names, to help them figure out what their future would look like, both organizationally and technologically. And they came to us because we have people working there. We built their entire architecture 5 years ago, and it's still the same architecture today because we built it in a very scalable way. And they came, and I told them, listen, it's your decision, but let me tell you one thing, everything we build for you, It's because we know your organization, and we also live the system, the whole existing ecosystem. All the recommendations we'll give you in the plan will be, as they say, practical things. What do you need to do tomorrow morning? In the end, they went with us, and we built something for them that was for the next 2 or 3 years, but with adaptability, because the world changes, and even we don't know what will happen in 2 years. Does anyone know? You don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. Exactly. Can you plan 3 years ahead? You can't. Totally. In the place we're at today, you can't plan 3 years ahead. I agree. We're getting close to the end, so I want to ask a few more. This really flew by. I told you, Shamli Osnitz, absolutely. I want to ask you, you don't just talk to companies here in Israel, you talk to companies around the world, you're also out there internationally. Israel has always been considered the startup nation. Are we still in that same position, and why? How is that? Why do we like to call ourselves innovative in the eyes of the world, in your opinion? I know why, and I'm really happy about it, but in your eyes, how do you see it when you meet so many people?
But to say that we can rest on our laurels? Absolutely not. We're facing a lot of challenges. Startups are facing challenges, especially with exports. Today, being an Israeli company is a challenge like never before, and we have to hope that stability will return. The whole world is unstable. Even if you look at what's happening in the United States, for example, after Trump came in and talked about tariffs. Tariffs and foreigners, the ability for foreigners to stay there, and talents, and research and development budgets. We're living in a very unstable world. And these things have an impact. And when someone puts pressure on the United States, someone else benefits. There is no vacuum. So these talents, if they're not in the United States, and help them get closer to the worlds of quantum and AI, they will be in other places. It's the same for us. If we don't know how to retain the talents, the startups, this kind of talent, there is no vacuum.
You know, I joined the Israeli High-Tech Association a few months ago. I joined because I believe that we need to make an impact. It's not just about standing on the sidelines and talking, but really making an impact, and they actually approached me and I agreed. One of the things we're really trying to do in the association is to promote those very agendas you're talking about right now, both of course with the government and also on the global stage. One of the things we're focused on is education, bringing back talent, both researchers and, of course, skilled professionals and engineers. And recently, also the issue of DNA, because unfortunately, and we're saying this openly here in the committee, in many countries we see government investment. Take Sweden, for example. Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia, really, and of course the United States, which is leading in this area. And we're a bit behind, even in terms of quantity. Speaking of startups, the number of startups, and I'm not talking about those implementing GNI, but the number of startups actually developing GNI tools here in Israel is smaller.
And by the way, we actually started from a good place in artificial intelligence, right? If you look, there's an ecosystem map of AI startups from a few years ago. A gorgeous slide, really. Packed. In every country, I show them, and I always tell the audience, I show them the ecosystem map of all kinds of fields in Israel, all sorts of domains, and then I get to AI. And then I say, and they go, wow. Now, if they don't say wow, I tell them, if you don't say wow, I'm not moving on to the next slide, because it really is impressive. Now, you're right. We have to stay on top of things, stay on this train, because otherwise, it's so easy to miss out. In a world that's changing so quickly, if you close your eyes for a second, someone else will take your place. There's no vacuum.
I'm not getting into politics here at all. This isn't the place, but I really think that if the government doesn't step in, put its hand in, and invest money in this area too, it's going to be very hard for us. Right now, the industry is doing it.
That's true.
Luckily for us, they're getting involved in doing a lot, but there's still a gap there. And I'm speaking frankly here. In the education system, we're doing our part.
In the education system, Iron Dome is the result of someone who was educated in elementary school and became something. That's right. So we need to invest in the younger generation. For the younger generation, the technology already exists to make knowledge accessible to them. It's just not being used.
They're already much more tech savvy, by the way, compared to how I was many years ago.
Let me tell you, my approach is that 80% of the kids, give them an iPad and a learning app. They need to work independently. The teacher just gets in the way, and then the teacher can, say, give one-on-one guidance for an hour a week. 20% of the students need a teacher, so instead of teachers managing a class of 40 students, they'll manage 8 students, hands-on, and help them progress. And there's the iPad, and there are the learning apps, and this is being done around the world. There's no need to reinvent the wheel. And I'll say, the former mayor of Dimona, Yeruam, sorry, the former mayor of Yeruam, Tal Akana, couldn't recruit English teachers. So what did she do?
She went outside.
She went to the Ministry of Education and provided every student in Yeruam with credit on a platform called NovaKid, which connects students with English teachers from the Philippines. See for yourself. Do you have any doubt that the students in Yeruam now know English better than the students in Tel Aviv? No, not at all. I have no doubt whatsoever. So she's a genius. She's a genius. She has a new one open. She faced a challenge. She realized she didn't have the resources in-house. She went and found it. And that's exactly what needs to be done. Everything is out there, doing the hand and back. All we need is to make a change. Technology, absolutely. It's here. We just need to pick it up, to use it. And that's in education, which is really the most important thing. Because that's our future. Education, the future of our children, our future, completely, and there. Once, when I was in the Philippines, 3 times in the past year, and on one of those trips I said, they really want to learn about innovation from Israel. So I told them, listen, let's make a deal. I'll find you 10 professors of innovation. I'll bring them here to teach for a semester, and in return, you bring us 1,000 English teachers. After all, they speak English in the Philippines. Just think for a moment, 1,000 Filipinos relocating to Israel, and they speak English. That's huge. We would already be giving our kids a head start. But come on, you know why it won't happen. Because there will be opposition here. So we have to overcome the why not. Whenever you're in a crisis or see something new, I always tell clients, try to think about why yes, not why not. Because if you're a Debbie Downer, your organization will end up like Nokia. And if you stay open and receptive, you'll be like Amazon or OpenAI. You have to be, or NVIDIA. Or NVIDIA, you see something new? Don't immediately jump to the reasons why not. Easiest thing to do. We just did it. Find way to say yes. Solve it. Say yes. Exactly. Think about why you should. Charges are being passed. Think about why you should. Otherwise, your organization will be stuck or left behind. Yes, it will become irrelevant. So really, this applies to every point in life. When I was 8 years old, my grandfather bought me an Atari 800 XL. I was about 8 or 9, maybe in 4th grade or so. There weren't really any devices back then. It was before the Apple II, the Commodore, and the PC clones, right? That's what there was. I'm sorry, that's where I first encountered it. And you know how much? The Atari 800 XL cost $1,000. The Epson printer also cost $1,000. Look at how we started, and that's where I first came across technology. Where is this grandpa of yours? Yeah, awesome grandpa, totally. When my client, 70% of his pilots turned into implementation, that's success. I'm really proud of the process and the people, truly. And when I see that he finishes a pilot and right before implementation he also invests in the startup, I'm thrilled. Amazing. Yes. Yes, they will. Truly. If you could go back 20 years, is this where you would choose to be today? I'm very happy with where I am. Yes, yes, honestly, yes. I wasn't happy with where I was all those years. Because like I told you, I was in startups where I really struggled, to say the least, and a lot of times, even in big organizations, I just didn't find myself. Today, I really enjoy what I do. I enjoy consulting, I enjoy giving lectures, I get to meet fascinating people, and I'm writing a book. I'm Finn. Wow, that's amazing. I'm not ready yet, but apparently the process until it's published will take another 6 months or so. I want to be among the first to get a copy when it comes out. So yeah, I'm really happy. Knock on wood. They told him to knock on the table here, and his boat. Here, you're allowed to. Hansa Rab, my name is Hebrew. I am very much. The thing that excites me the most is that, people think that those who work in innovation know everything and are familiar with everything. But every morning I discover something new. I think intellectual subjectivity is one of the most important qualities for those who lead innovation and those who deal with innovation. Every morning I'm amazed. I tell my wife, listen, you won't believe this. Because every time, really, something, when no one has forgotten, yes, it's true, the rules of innovation, it's just, wow, because. Really, you might think you're, let's say, an expert in a field for 20 years, and then you wake up in the morning and you discover something new. Think about it, pretty amazing, really amazing. And if you all are involved in this, that's how we are. The chances are that the managers at the highest levels, the decision makers, the directors, these are very important people, and how important our role is to make that wow accessible to them so they won't be caught off guard. Because if we're surprised and amazed, what will they say? So we have a really, really important job, because if we don't do our job properly, it's always. I see this as a mission, generally speaking. Beyond being the CEO of the company, of course it's important to me that my company succeeds. I see it as both a mission and a responsibility. I have a lot of responsibility toward the clients, because if they're caught off guard, I have failed. That's right. And you can't afford to be surprised. And that's really hard in a world that's so chaotic, completely private, in a chaotic world. The pace is, wow, wait, let's, so we don't talk over each other. That's how intense it is, and that it controls them. Let's drink some water. It really is a lot of fun. I'm doing really well, and I want to keep doing what I'm doing. I still have places I want to reach. I want to have an impact on the boards of big companies. As a board member, on innovation, and so far, I've failed at that. I haven't succeeded, like, I got in big boards. It's hard to get onto boards. They prefer people with ranks on their shoulders, or all kinds of things like that. They connect less here. It's harder to bring in someone who's innovative, but it will happen. Because studies show that when there's a function like that, the company does better. Right. And I also admit that the world of investments is tempting to me, because at some point, I'm in a very unique position with my clients. I see the startups at the point where the pilot has succeeded. And that means that we've done very thorough due diligence on them, the client and I. Like no venture capital fund ever invests in them. And then my clients invest. And then I say, wait a minute. Why am I not enjoying the upside? There's nothing to be done. That's just how it is. So I am building something, some kind of investment vehicle for a group of investors. When I see something good and I tell a client to invest in it, whether they invest or not, because it's their right not to listen.
No.
Even though up until now, all my recommendations, even if they didn't listen to them, turned out to be right. It's not like I have 200,000 recommendations a year, but let's say one client a year. I might tell them 5 times, here, it's worth investing too. But in those cases, I can also help a few of my friends and myself, to enjoy the upside.
Sure.
And that's an area I haven't really developed enough yet. I feel like I'm missing out.
I hope so. Unfortunately, again I say unfortunately, because I really enjoy talking to you. I could talk for hours.
Let's meet.
We'll set up another meeting.
Book comes out.
It's amazing that with everyone I host here, how did you put it? It's fun to meet people and listen, and I enjoy it so much. For me, the podcast is like an island of enjoyment. I started it over a year and a half ago, and it's amazing how much I enjoy meeting people along the way with so many insights. Bibi, but I have to wrap up. And first of all, thank you so much, Itai.
Thank you for inviting me.
And I want to finish, just as I have ended every podcast for the past year and a half, as always, with a prayer.
Absolutely.
For the return of the hostages. And to say that things will be good for us, for our soldiers to come home safely. THTH that way. That we really get through this situation and see better days, Hoping that we will all truly be here, that all those people who also relocated will return, and that they will have a good time in the country. But first and foremost, that they will return one by one, quickly. And that we return to ourselves, yes, to sanity. Right. Thank you. Love you. Thank you. Thank you very much for listening. You can hear us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and on all podcast platforms. Follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, and on our website. If you enjoyed the episode, be sure to share it with a friend who might enjoy it too. See you in the next episode.